Hey friend, and welcome to the 12 days of Christmas. This is day number 6. And during these 12 days before we celebrate Christmas, we want to take a moment to remind ourselves here at MARKINC Ministries why we do what we do. With all the various resources we produce, they are designed to offer help and hope to hurting people. And so we want to hear from you. And that's why we're doing these 12 days of Christmas, to extend to everyone who watches stories that are coming directly from the hurting people. So Sharon, why do we do at MARKINC Ministries what we do?
Well, Chuck, recently I saw a video of a man who was in a marathon. I think it was his first one, and he was almost at the finish line, but it was obvious he wasn't going to make it, that he wanted to quit, and he was stumbling. And a stranger came up next to him and started running with him and saying, "You can make it, you can make it. It's not much further, you can make it." And of course, it's one of those moving emotional moments where just a touch from another person gave the man what he needed to keep on going. And as I watched it, and I was in tears, I was thinking this is kind of what we do with MARKINC Ministries. We are strangers often to people who just come up alongside and say, because of Christ, you're going to make it. You're almost there. You're almost home. And so one of the stories that I want to share with you, one of the notes I want to share with you really says just that. She had read the Daily Treasure devotional, and she says, "I came across your devotional in August, and every day spoke to me as I walked the journey toward losing my husband in early September. God spoke to me years ago with the words from the Valley of Baca, or weeping, and I find myself in that valley again. Thank you for the daily encouragement in my journey through that valley. I never dreamt I'd be a widow before 70, but here I am. I start the devotionals and emails, and I feel as though they speak to my situation. The ones that do, I star them. And many of the Daily Treasure emails that are starred are like my personal journal since August. Thank you, and now finding myself a widow, I do want to age with grace." And we receive notes like that a lot from people who are lonely, just as you've heard Chuck talk previously, especially this time of year. And our resources become, by the power of God's grace, a touch, someone coming up next to that person who's just struggling to get to the finish line, but is encouraged by the grace, the help, and the hope of the gospel in the resources.
It's interesting she mentions Psalm 84, which is where we find the story of the Valley of Baca. The Valley of Baca was a valley of tears. That's what the word Baca means, because it was in the middle of a rough journey that the pilgrims would take. The Jewish pilgrims would make their march to Jerusalem, to the temple, which was a highlight, spiritual highlight of their year. It was a time when Israel would long for the temple, long to see the glorious temple, and they would make that pilgrimage through the Valley of Baca every year. And when you study that passage of Psalm 84, it talks about brooks in the way. It talks about streams along the way. And what would happen through this desert passage was sudden rainstorms would come up, and it would fill the craters in the desert, the hard pan desert, with water. They would drink that water, but leave the hole there because others were coming behind them, and they were going to be looking for that water along the way as well. So the pilgrims would actually dig the holes, have the sudden rainstorms fill those holes with water, not just so that they could drink, but those coming behind them can also drink. That's what MARKINC Ministries is all about. We tell stories of people that are out there in the middle of the desert, taking a drink of water and digging a hole for you, because you're going to come along and you're going to experience the same kind of suffering. I would encourage you during this Christmas season as a family to sit down and read Psalm 84, keeping in mind those people are digging those holes in the desert, waiting for the sudden streams to provide them with water, but also to provide those sufferers, those pilgrims longing for the temple as they are, with the same drink of water that they just tasted. So, Sharon, that's one of the reasons why we do what we do. We want people to look back in their suffering and encourage those with a drink of water, with a stream in the desert along the way, so that when they come through that same parched valley, that valley of Baca, that valley of tears, there will be a drink for them there. That's why we do at MARKINC Ministries what we do.